What's going on, sports fans? It's Wes Pruitt, 4 Star Sports Media. You are sitting down at the sports buffet. You know how we do it, folks. You always come and get full of sports. And we've got, speaking of sports, man, we've got a guy that here in the state of Arkansas, he's a face that everyone knows. I like to tell people I have a face for radio, but John has a face that everyone knows, and he's got a voice as well. And that's Mr. John Nabors from inside Arkansas. John, thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah. It's I hear the whole thing of face made for radio because I did radio for 10 years, but I guess I'll take that as a compliment. It's not much competition in the radio world, so I'll take anything I can get. But I appreciate it, man, and thanks for having me on.
So let's start there, John. Let's talk a bit about you. Let's talk a bit about your journey in media, sports radio. How did you become John Nabors of Inside Arkansas?
Yeah, it's a story that I've told. I feel like just a few times. I haven't told it a whole lot because it's just no one's really asked, I guess. But since you asked, I appreciate it. I've been a Razorback fan my whole life, and I grew up being a Razorback fan, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in college. It's probably why it took me so long, and why I was just messing around, screwing around. And I remember I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car part-time when I was in college. And I would drive vehicles around and I wouldn't say have to, but I would listen to local sports talk radio because, it's just passing the time or whatever. And I remember thinking that as like the person that was on there, the show that was on there was like, I could do better than that. And so I just kind of jumped into it. And I reached out with an email saying, hey, is there any opportunities or anything like that? And they basically told me, well, you can push a button and be running a board for minor league baseball games. And you can crack the mic or anything like that. And I just took it. It was minimum wage. It was nothing extravagant. And then basically, the person who had the show on that station, after a few months of doing that, they had a producer, if you want to call him that would basically just answer the phones and then sometimes crack the mic. And he asked me if I wanted to do that because his other producer was leaving. So I said, yeah, absolutely. Did that, and then I fill and hosted a couple times when he was gone, and I guess I did a good job because I got a phone call from the rival station, and they asked me, "Hey, we really like what you do in those shows. Would you like a gig?" Got a gig there, and then it just kind of kept growing. I kept getting opportunities and kept working on my craft, and kind of keeping my head on a swivel and everything, and just kept going, and then. On top of that, too, I used to do. I got asked to do an SEC. It was called the SEC Country Arkansas podcast. It was back when SEC Country was a thing, and I needed some extra income, and they were doing this thing with the podcast, and I did it, and I was making some good money, but it went under very quickly. The entire company did because it just wasn't built. But the podcast was really good and successful, and a few years after that came to an end, I got a phone call from a guy named David Locke, who is the voice of the Utah Jazz, play-by-play. So random. I was living in Fort Smith at the time, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing this Arkansas version podcast because he remembers me on the SEC Country podcast, and he felt like I did a good job with that. Asking if I wanted to do it, and I was like, yeah, I enjoyed podcasting, so I did it, and it wasn't very fun in the beginning because podcasting is hard. I try to tell people, anyone who ever says, hey, I want to start a podcast and do that, I'm like, good on you, but just know that you're not going to have probably anyone that listens, or you're not going to make any money on it for the first few years, just because it's so difficult to do. And that's how it was for me. I didn't make any money on it, and not many people were listening to it. And then just consistency kept going with it, and I kept at it. And eventually, the company that David Locke started getting more steam, and all these different teams that were involved in the sales team, and started selling it really well. And it became very lucrative for me because I had the pleasure of, when I first signed on with it, the contract that I signed with that, I would make 80% of all revenue that my podcast would make with Locked On Razorbacks. And since that point, anytime that it made any sponsorships or viewership or whatever, I get 80% of that. And it got to the point to where I started making more money on that than I was with my gig in radio, which I'm very thankful for. And so I just kind of looked at the landscape and I love sports talk radio. I worked at almost every sports talk radio station in the state. I love my time at 103.7 The Buzz, which is where I was at. And I wanted to kind of take that next step and be the wave of the new future, because that's where everything felt like it was going, was to more of a podcasting, live streaming type of place. And I wanted to be one of the first ones to do it in the way that I wanted to do it, of driving it and being Razorback, centric and everything. And uh, luckily, I had an idea on it. I really put it all together. I put in these ideas, and I've had extremely talented people that like Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis that are phenomenal. I mean, they're the best in what they do, and I think that that was really as lucky as I could get of getting somebody and getting those guys to come and join me. That is, without them, I probably wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now, because I felt that great about them. So yeah, it's just been it's a long winded answer, but it's a pretty complicated story, I guess. But yeah, I'm just very blessed and very excited, and a lot of hard work, but it's going really great so far with what we're doing in Inside Arkansas.
So you just talked about it. Andrew Ellis, Curtis Wilkerson. I mean, if you're a head coach, you got to have a team that play the game. And I mean, at the same time, if you're an offensive coordinator, you got to have a quarterback, got to have different position players. When you look at Andrew and you look at Curtis and what they bring, not just you, but inside Arkansas, what is it about those two guys that really said, okay, these are my targets. These are the guys I want to try to get on my team?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that I love about him, but really got to be friends with Curtis to start, because me and him would go to the NCAA tournaments when he was writing for Hog Sports and I was with 103.7 The Buzz. We would go to Buffalo. We would go to San Francisco, wherever it was, not necessarily together, but we'd be there at the same time because he was covering it and I was covering it. And since we didn't really know anybody up there, we'd just say, "Hey, since we're Arkansas media, let's hang out." And so we became really good friends that way. And I could tell that he was just another level of really good at when it comes to basketball and his mindset and his approach to it. And I felt like that's why I wanted him on my show all the time, is because he was just so good at laying it out in a very understanding way for people that may not be, people like me who may not know every in and out about the game, but basically would lay it out nicely and saying what's important, what's not, why it's this way, why it's not this way. And that was really something that I enjoyed. But there's maybe other people that do that, but what really just made me want to have Curtis be a part of it was because of his passion. I'm a passionate person, and I want to be passionate about everything I do. And because if I'm not passionate about what I do, then I'm not going to be good at it in my mind. And I wanted somebody who's passionate about it, like Curtis, because it doesn't matter about anything else if you have somebody like him that's going to be as passionate as he is. He's going to be always working and working extremely hard at it, and perfecting it and getting better at it, because he wants that. And it's the same thing with Andrew about baseball, where we're all different personalities and we all approach things differently, but Andrew has a knowledge of the game that is so approachable and relatable to people. It's not it doesn't come from a place of I'm smarter than you, or I'm better than you in anything. He approaches it in a way of just laying it out and looking at the options and saying it in a very fluid way that even if he doesn't know what he's talking about, you would never know, because of how much he approaches it and how great he is at that. And so having all those things kind of come together, I wanted to have people that were different than me. I don't want people who are the same as me. I want people different than me, but I want them to share the same passion, and both of those guys do. And that's why they are so good at what they do, and why I am never going to be once concerned or worried about them not being great and not being even better a year from now than what they are right now, because they put in the passion, they put in the energy, they put in the work, and they believed in what we're trying to do here. And so, again, people always feel maybe certain ways about me, which is fine. I take it, but I am never going to be arrogant enough to think that the success of my company and the success of Inside Arkansas is based solely because of me. I know it's on the shoulders of those two guys as much as anything. And that's why I'm just extremely thankful that they've joined me, they've stuck with me, and that we're doing what we're doing, because I'm proud of it. And I wouldn't trade them for anybody at all in any capacity. Those are my guys. And I'm going to I'm going to be so happy if I can just keep them here at Arkansas, because who knows, maybe they'll get bigger, better jobs elsewhere. But with me and with us and what we're doing, I'm very thankful that they're on board.
All right, John. Now let's get into a topic that a lot of Arkansas fans in the state. Now, I've only lived in Fayetteville for 3 years. I've lived in the state for uh, 8 now.
Yeah.
Um, Born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, so I'm a definite outsider here. House divided. Can't wait for September 20th next year. We'll just leave it at that. When you look at Arkansas, it starts at the top. Hunter Yurachek. He's had been a man that's. I'll just put it this way, John. You know the Arkansas fan base better than I do, but there's some real psychos out there on Twitter, and in the fan base in general. But when you look at Hunter Yurachek, he's a guy that's been very. He's been chastised. He's been ridiculed. He's been. There's people right now that think he's just an idiot. But you go back and you look at the hirings that he's made, and you look at the coaches and how they have. I know it's going to be a controversial statement, but including Sam Pittman, they have improved the program. What is it about Hunter Yurachek that you like, John, as a fan? But then on the flip side of that, from a media PR standpoint, where does he need to get better to make his athletic department better? Sorry, it's a really long question.
No, I get what you're saying, and I feel like it needs to be known that there are ways that you can be critical of somebody, and there are ways you can be praising of somebody, and it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. Like there can be people like a Yurachek that are just making mistakes or making things I don't agree with, but also still doing some good things too. It's not just about, oh, he's either awful or, oh, is amazing. So that's kind of where I stand with Hunter Yurachek. I try to call balls and strikes as much as I can with the job that he's done. But the thing that I honestly, I really like about Yurachek, and I've always liked it about him, is that regardless of some of the things he's done that maybe I disagreed with, he's always had a presence in a way of it's not about him. That's to me what can be the ultimate undoing for an athletic director is if you start to come across or start to showcase yourself as in like, well, this is about me. This is about my face. This is about me getting out there and showing my rear end about everything and making everything about me. I don't get that vibe, and I never have gotten that vibe. And it's easy to do because we know we all have egos, but when you're in that position of power and everyone's talking about how great you are, it's hard not to start believing in it. And so I really respect him from that perspective of not approaching it that way where it's, oh, it's me, 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 me. Because I think that's, and especially for how long he's been at Arkansas and the success that he has had, it's easy to deal with. But the one thing that I will say, as far as things I'd like to see him improve on, which I'm sure he really cares about my opinion on this matter. But one of the things I'd like to see is just a more of an open level of communication to the fan bases. And I'm not talking about just simply, going on Twitter and doing things. I'm talking about, being a lot more in depth and a lot more involved. He's a busy man. I get it. And I think that there are so many assets and so many things that go on as an athletic director that we don't even know, like we don't even understand, because there's so many layers to it. But I think it would just go a long way for him if there's something that's going on that there is a vast majority, or at least a huge amount of fans that are concerned with or upset by, or whatever it is, to just address it. Because at the end of the day, these are the fans that are going to purchase your tickets and do all those things. If people are concerned about the football program and they don't like the direction it's going, and they don't, if they don't wanted Pittman fired or whatever, which that's what I felt like this past football offseason was. As soon as the season ended, it just didn't have the people didn't have the energy and the fun and the passion towards it, because it felt like, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, no one cares. If you're going to stick with someone like Sam Pittman in this case, then just come out and either make a video of it or a statement or just something to where people can see why you chose to continue this and why you feel like it's going to be best to do this. Same thing when it comes to, you know, we can bring a bunch of examples, but like the reseeding things in Bud Walton Arena, which, you know, I understand it, I get it, and I understand why people are upset by it, but it was a huge deal. And so I think that they did a good job of maybe sugarcoating it a little bit as to why they were doing it. But hey, if you're going to do it, come right out and be like, hey, this is why we're doing it. We have people that are willing to pay us big money for these seats, a lot more money than the current people. We're giving them the opportunity to keep those seats if they can up those payments. But if they can't, then we're going to have to, we got to make money. We got to be able to do this. We got to be a functioning athletic department. So here's why. You know, just something that can be really just to the fans, not sugarcoating it, not being political, not being just, you know, oh, well, this is what we're doing. And then not even caring about the reaction or the follow ups. Just show the common fan and prove to the common fan that you do care about their thinking and you do care about their opinions. As stupid, and not saying everybody's is going to have a good one. And I'm not talking about to the weird trolls on Twitter. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
yeah, I wish you would do a lot more to just being transparent and a little bit more communicating of all those things that they end up doing that ends up causing a problem for fans.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that that's just not here on the Hill in Fayetteville. I think college athletics in general need more transparency, especially with what we saw take place and over at UTK at UT Knoxville. Um, Nico just trying to stronghold somebody. But my thing is this, John, and you're part of the media, you understand this. Where's the apology from Nico's father, who blatantly came out and said this guy's full of crap? No, he wasn't full of crap. And I'm pretty sure when you made that statement, you knew he wasn't full of crap. When are we going to see the flip side to what we see right now with a lot of media? And that is them getting the praise versus always being the prey.
Well, I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it's because it's so easy for things like that to chalk it up to just, oh, media, you know, because the media is only as good as the story that they have, or is only as good as the team that they cover and everything. And so, you know, I don't think we'll ever get to that point to where it'll just be owned up to, or to, because, you know, we've been held accountable in the media in a lot of cases, but, you know, nobody cares if the media is upset. You know, nobody cares if the media got offended and everything. And I agree. I feel like there should have been some apologies that were made, especially with the comments that were made with the whole Nico situation. However, you know, what's going to be, it's about balancing out of like, all right, the pros and cons. Like, what pro would be had for Nico's dad, for instance, to apologize to Pete Nakos? What would be the con? Well, the con would be is that it would show that oh, you were wrong, you were lying, you're doing all this. But the pro would be what? He feels better about himself. It's not going to get his
Right.
son any more money. It's not going to get him. So I think people just weigh that pros and cons, and when it comes to the media, it's like there's no pro to owning up to anything, and it's more going to hurt you than anything. So just don't do it. And I think that's the approach a lot of people do, and a lot of I don't agree with it, obviously, but it just seems like it's the
Right.
way it is.
With the Nico situation, from a big picture standpoint, do you think this changes everything with NIL, or do you think this forces guidelines and ceilings to be put in place faster?
I mean, I think that everything is trying to get into place as fast as possible. But the problem is that you just are waiting on rulings. I mean, you got to wait on the governments because state governments have different rules. And so that's been the problem. I mean, there's some states where you can pay high school athletes NIL, and there's some states you can't. And so you're just kind of hamstringed by it. I truly believe everybody wants there to be some regulation and everything, but until everyone's on the same page when it comes to the laws of the land, you know, this is what we're going to have to see. So I'm hopeful that as soon as some things get passed, the revenue sharing, all of that will help. I don't think it'll ever be a perfect system, but certainly can help from stories like this continuing on. But for where it's at right now, I just don't see it changing. And honestly, I was surprised it took this long for something like this to happen at this level.
It's a great point. I agree completely. All right. Speaking of NIL, where does Arkansas sit Are they towards the top? Are they towards the bottom? Do we really know? I feel like a lot of these valuations are really inflated by parents like Nico's dad, for example, agents and others. We really don't even know the true numbers because there's no contracts. Where does Arkansas shape up, do you think, in being an attractive place for a player to come play? Not just football here, John. I'm talking about just big picture.
Well, honestly, I think in every other sport besides football, at this point, it's near the top. I mean, we know
Yeah.
what Tyson and Cal have done together. You know, in basketball, I think it's just however much they want to spend. And in baseball, I think that you can see the results from that. Even the smaller sports, the non-revenue generating sports, you see some big time players coming in. And to me, that's like forget about the amounts and forget about the dollar signs and everything. I've said this from the beginning. It's a simple way. If you want to know how good your athletic department is, or just a certain program is in NIL, you have to look at just one simple thing: your best players that are on your team. They have a great year. Do they stay or do they go? Because I promise you that if you have a great player on your team that people would love to have on their roster and they stay with you another year, they're not doing it because they're, oh, well, this program over here offered me $1 million, but I'm staying over here as a Razorback because you're paying me $10. Like, that's not how it's going. It's about if you have the true retention of your best players, because you're going to have players that transfer because they're not playing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But that, to me, that's the ultimate example of it. Like, look at Razorback baseball. How many players can you name that of Razorback baseball since the NIL era started that were huge, big time players for Arkansas that hit the portal? Almost none of them.
Not
Not a single one, because they're
right.
doing just fine. Basketball is going to be the same way with Cal. I know that we're still waiting on all the news to hit, but as far as the players that they really wanted to have, like none of them have really hit the portal. I know Big Z did, but you're just not losing out on that. But that's where I saw what happened with football this past season, and that was the first time I'm like, okay, either they don't have the NIL or they're not getting the support for the NIL that they once did. They used to have that. They used to have really good NIL, because I know that there's some elements of maybe some negativity and negative feelings towards these particular players. But I remember after the 2022 season in football, you went 6-6, but you had KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, who Rocket Sanders led the SEC in rushing. KJ was awesome too. Those were two players that a lot of people would have wanted. Those guys did not hit the portal. They stayed in. And I just say, hey, you knew you had a good NIL program because they were doing whatever it took to keep those guys there. Those great players that could have gone anywhere in the SEC at the time, you kept them. So I think that football used to have it that way, but not so much anymore. So the point is, as far as the whole athletic department, I think it's there. I think it's there when they want it to be. It's just a matter of, do they want it to be? And do they have the support for it? Do they have the system in place for it? I think they're really waiting on this revenue sharing thing to get going, and then they can kind of make their moves. But we'll see if it's a risk that's willing to pay off. But I think that they've just been hanging out in limbo until they get some real answers on that revenue sharing thing, and that's why you see them not really spending a whole ton of money on pretty much anything at this point in time, at least not directly from the university.
John Nabors from Inside Arkansas has joined us today on the Sports Buffet. John, just a couple more questions for you. Like I said, man, I appreciate you carving some time out for me today. So, we learned that John Nabors found out about the gym backs this year. So, John, let's talk a little bit about Arkansas gymnastics. We've been going for the last 3 years. In my opinion, and this is not popular and I don't care, in my opinion, the gymnastics event is the best bang for your buck entertainment on campus.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely could see that. I think that I've known about the gymnastics team, and I've known Jordan Weber, and obviously the job that she's done and her staff has done, and it's awesome. And I actually have a few good friends of mine that are diehard gym back fans. They live in Little Rock and they drive up for meets, like they love it. And I always meant to go to one once I moved back up here to Fayetteville, just like a lot of different sporting events. I want to go to a softball game because I've been to them before, but this year in the gymnastics, I remember I was at Alumni Hall doing a live show on a Friday, and Jordan Weber and Corey, the hype man,
Yeah.
were there at the game, or at Alumni Hall shopping, and I talked to both of them. And luckily, Jordan knew who I was, which I'm not saying that that's a big deal to me, but someone as famous as her, if she like recognized me, I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right because that means she like knew my name. That made me happy. But we talked about it, and I was like, she's like, you gonna be there tonight? And I'm like, yeah, of course, wouldn't miss it. And so like that, and with Corey, I and my friends actually were coming up for the meet, so I was like, okay, I'll go. This will be the time I finally go. And it was when Arkansas went up against LSU,
Yeah.
and they won, and it was awesome. And I just thought it was really fun. I love it because I'm big about energy. I love energy and excitement because if something that I'm watching or listening to or anything has energy, which is why I kind of based a lot on what I do with my content, then I want to be a part of it. I want to see more of it. I enjoy it. And that's the thing about the gymnastics meet. I don't know what's going on a lot of times. I don't understand the scoring a lot of times. I'm sure there's like, crash course that people could go through to understand that. But I love the energy and I love the vibes, and I think it's really fun with music and with cool stuff like that. To me, it's if nobody's ever been, definitely go because it's very enjoyable, especially if you have kids, because it's something that in kid of all ages, and it doesn't matter if they're into gymnastics or not. It's something that's just a lot of fun.
I've actually reached out to Corey, man, because I told Corey I need some of these just playlists of music that they have. I mean, just the music alone, I thoroughly enjoy. Um, and to your point, Bogle is a blast. I was out. We went to the Iowa game earlier this year when they played out there. Man, that's a beautiful ballpark. And man, that softball team is rolling right now. John, two more questions for you, man. They both have to do with you.
Okay.
So, if you were to ask John Nabors at his core, what is your why in life? What would that be?
My why in life. Interesting. It's funny is I don't think I've ever been asked anything like that before. Uh, what my why in life is. Um, I guess if I was gonna put something on it, I'm big on like togetherness and community, which I know sounds really cliche, but that's why I like doing what I'm doing now. Is because it's a matter of bringing people together for something. And I've grown up and I've been a Christian my whole life, and my faith means a lot to me. And I've always felt like there was that togetherness that you had in faith. Which not to say it's everything's perfect and there's not disagreements, there's not issues, but when you have everybody trying to coming together for the same goal, there's something special about that. And it's not just in religion, it's in sports, it's in everything. And being a Razorback fan, everybody's got their own opinion on how the team should be or how their expectations. Some people are over the top positive, some people are over the top negative. Everybody's just got their own opinion on everything. But at the end of the day, what every single Razorback fan wants is to win. That's it. And if they win, none of the rest matters. And I'm telling you, just as someone who interacts with fans a lot and have grown up with fans a lot and can relate to fans a lot, there's nothing more special to me than when Arkansas is doing really well, and especially if it's in a sport that you know everybody gets behind. If it's football, if it's basketball, whatever it is. But when they're winning, that feeling of everybody just being together and the excitement and happiness that it brings people. I made the joke, but it's true. It's like it makes everything better in life. It makes your jobs better. It makes your family life better. It makes everything if you're a Razorback fan and the Razorbacks are doing well because you just feel like you're a part of something great. And that's what I always want to have my life in, is like I want to be a part of something great. And I don't have to lead it. I don't have to be the number one guy in it, but I do want to be a part of it. And to me, that's what my why is in life. I always truly want to be a part of something great in every aspect of my life, and that's where I feel like I've been able to be fortunate enough to do what I do with the Razorback fans that I do it with. So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, to me, that's what it's about.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. And honestly, I like the fact that and I generally ask a question like that because at the end of the day, when I'm interviewing someone, I want to learn about you just as much as I feel like my fans want to learn about you. But it's bigger than sports with us here at Four Star. Like, I want to talk about you. You just mentioned you have a very strong faith. So off of that, we've talked with Cammie Weaver.
Mhm.
She's very strong in her faith as well. Her, Frankie Price, Maddie Jones, and others. When you look at it in 2025, that's a lot more openly discussed than maybe in ways past. When you look at your strength in your faith, how do you take that every day and put it towards not just inside Arkansas, but towards John Neighbors being who John Neighbors is? Is it I mean, obviously it's a challenge, right? To walk in the straight and narrow is never easy. But how do you lean on your faith and make yourself and your brand better?
Wow. No, I appreciate the question because again, I haven't been asked these really before, and I don't think I've ever talked too much about it publicly. But I just try to like with my content and everything. I don't talk much about it, which some people may think it's counterintuitive to not talk about your faith a whole lot. And it's not that it's not important. It's just I know what some people may consider to be divisive and and there's time and places for everything. And so that's where that's why I don't get political with my Razorback sports talk. I don't get, things that I know can cause division among people. It goes back to the togetherness of it all. Like I don't care about that stuff when it comes to what I do for my job and everything. Like my job is to just talk about the Razorbacks and it has nothing to do with religion, it has nothing to do with politics, it has nothing to do with any of those things. So I've always, steered away from that. But we're all like, none of us are perfect. And we're all going to make mistakes. And Lord knows I've made like a lot of mistakes. But it's about, understanding that there's no perfect person in this world. There's only perfect intentions. And it's about having the right intentions. And I think for me, some people may feel like they know me or like, go after me on social media and say like I'm a douchebag and I'm arrogant and I'm a jerk and all these things. And it doesn't bother me because I know who I am. But, I truly believe that I try to do everything. I try to do right by people, and even if my personality doesn't mix with others or if people don't like my content, that's fine. I mean, that's totally fine. That's why there's different ones out there that there's something for everybody. But, um, I just, at the end of the day, I don't care if like I lose all my money or if I lose all my, like, if I lose my credibility as a Razorback talk show host or whatever it is. Like that doesn't bother me. But what helps me sleep at night and what's going to always make me feel like, what I'm doing is right, is just to make sure that I do right by people. And this past year was a great example of that with what happened with Natty State Sports and kind of getting into, having to rebrand it and everything. There was a lot of that had to like, I don't know if I did things smart, like as far as the rebranding and all of that, but I know I was trying to do what was right.
Yeah,
And if I end up suffering for that, then I'll suffer for it and I'll own up to it. But um, I'm not here to screw anybody over. I'm not here to ever have any sort of issues with anybody. I'd rather be brutally honest with them. But to go back to your question, sorry, it's a long answer. I'm kind of rambling,
you're
but
good.
um, my faith is what is just, if anybody can say anything about me, it's truly knows me. And I think it's a great quote. I always forget who said it, but it's like, if you ever have a problem with me, then call or text me. But if you don't have my phone number, then you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. And so that's where I take that mentality and remembering who I am and what I'm here for. Um, it's like at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that anybody I interact with, anybody I know, that I work with, whatever, that when they go about their life and they're asked about me, that, they, and it's not to say, again, they don't have to say that they like me. Or they don't have to say that I'm friends with them or anything, but I just hope that they say that I'm not a piece of trash. I'm not a bad person, because that my reputation does mean something to me when it comes to that. Because I want to be a great person. And, I want to be forgiving. I want to be, uh, understanding that no one's perfect and that people make mistakes. And, we get better from them. And I just want to be, just like, again, part of something great that is understanding of that circumstance and of that situation. So that's, to me, what has kind of helped mold me into and the approach that I have to what I do and with the company that I do it with.
Everybody has layers, man, and we find ways to peel back here at Four Star. I don't know. I find ways to pull emotion out of people. I don't know. It's crazy. John, as we close, man, it's time. The floor is yours. You get to tell us who is inside Arkansas. How do we follow you guys? Go ahead and shout out your crew again, and let us know anything you got coming up.
Yeah, man, no, I appreciate it. Inside Arkansas, you can pretty much follow us in any form or fashion on social media, as well as on YouTube and our audio podcast, wherever podcasts are found, on Spotify, Apple, everything. We are Razorback driven, and I always kind of use the tagline of "Powered by Arkansas for Arkansas." It's because it's for all of you who are Arkansas fans, and we root for the team too. And I don't steer away from that. I'm not one of these media members that say like, I'm unbiased, and no, I want the Razorbacks to win. And when they lose, I'm upset. Like it's just a fact, and I'm not running from that. And that's what we try to approach it in a civil way and in a professional way, but also let everybody be understanding that we want this place to do good, and when they do good, we do good. So if you want any sort of Razorback content, it's what we do. And I know that football is what it is, and we'll talk more about it once football season comes around. But when it comes to basketball, there's only one place you need to go, and that's Pod at the Palace with Curtis Wilkerson. Again, best in the business. And then for baseball, it's the Bombastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis. Those are, again, the best podcast when it comes to those specific things that you'll ever see and you'll ever have, and you don't have to go anywhere else. I mean, that is the way, as they say. So you can check it out that way. Again, follow us on social media. Go to InsideArkansas.com for our website and everything. You can follow me on social media at John Nabors Show if you just want to deal with my nonsense, because I usually don't take anything too seriously. It's like what somebody once said, that don't take life too seriously, you'll never make it out alive. That's kind of how I look at it. Yeah. Just have fun with the absurdity of life, and focusing on the things that actually matter. But anyways, you can find us and find me pretty much anywhere out there on social media for those of you who are actually interested in that sort of thing.
Well, John Nabors, we appreciate your time today, man. And we are big proponents of Inside Arkansas here. And we love the little collaboration that we've created with you guys over there. You guys do incredible work. Once again, man, appreciate you coming on with me.
Hey, anytime. Appreciate you. And let me know if you ever need anything, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we will be back right here on the Sports Buffet. We're presented by 4 Star Sports.